Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
Now, the next story, Dolce & Gabbana have been accused of racism in China. It's been forced to cancel a major show in Shanghai. The brand's responded by saying that it's been hacked. Now, this is all about an advert of a Chinese model eating spaghetti with chopsticks. It started with that, didn't it?
That's right. Let me show you a little clip of that video. Here it is on Instagram. Here she is. She's lots of sort of tinny, quite stereotypical Chinese music is played. There she is with the chopsticks having a go at eating the spaghetti. And it goes on from spaghetti to cannelloni and then to pizza, also with those chopsticks. Now, users of Weibo, that's the Chinese version of Twitter, have said that this is trivializing Chinese culture and depicting the woman here in a racist way. The hashtag Boycott Dolce then began to surface online pretty quickly. I'll just give you a sample reaction of a few that we can find on Twitter, bearing in mind, of course, that that's banned in China. But it says here, embarrassing, what's wrong with their marketing team? Do they think we lived in 1908? But I have to say, as you alluded to, things really took a turn for the worse for Dolce & Gabbana when it came to their response. A private message was leaked that was apparently sent by Stefano Gabbana, one of the co-founders.
Do I see poop emojis there?
You do. What I'm not going to do here is read to you some of the details that he said, because there is some pretty explicitly racist content. But
that's really sad, isn't it?
It is, but it's interesting. Certainly the language is racist, but look at the latest Instagram post of his. He says, "It's not me." And that's the official response from Dolce & Gabbana's account themselves. They say, our Instagram was hacked. His account was hacked as well. They say they're investigating, and actually it had nothing to do with them at all.
So he's using the kind of the shaggy defence, it wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
Does anybody believe him, I wonder?
Well, that's the question. Officially, of course, Mark, the jury's out. But there is plenty of scepticism online, as some people saying, why would somebody hack his account simply to send private racist messages, particularly given that we know that he is someone in the past who has quite a history with some inflammatory language. One person here saying, not hacked, will someone please make a list of Stefano Gabbana's greatest Instagram hits, and they include for you, if you're interested, suggesting that gay people shouldn't have children, and also saying that Beijing was and is an underdeveloped city. And as we heard then in our business update a bit earlier on, that's all having a pretty serious impact on the consumer market there, where the luxury good market is key for China. And I just wonder if I can end with one Instagram. That's
Go ahead.
From this woman here. She's a Chinese model. She was due to appear in a Dolce & Gabbana show this month. She's pulled out, and then she says there, you are cowards.
Jen Estelle with those words. Nadia, thank you very much. Nadia Massey with Media Watch.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Sunday, November 25th, 2018. So I have been told this is our monthly, even though we have been absent for about the last 3 months. We did our last Global Sunday talk on racism in July, and it's just been a very challenging year calendar year for Gus T, and I'm sure all victims of racism, white supremacy, the flood displacement, yoga teacher trainings, and it's just been a disruptive year for scheduling. But back, racism, white supremacy is global, in my view, very important to be mindful of that at all times. I think a lot of conversations anywhere in the world, I think frequently the conversations end up being that racism is just a problem in this particular location, that somehow if we could pick up and go someplace else in the world, things would be better. Racism wouldn't be a problem. We could do whatever we want and not have to deal with this issue, and that is false. You can travel, you can study, you can do both, you can talk to people in other parts of the world, but that is false. Whether racists are there directly or not, the system of white supremacy is global and there is nowhere to run. That being said, our Global Sunday Talk, we make an effort to have participants who are outside the United States come in, share a thought or two on the system of racism, white supremacy, things they've been seeing, some of the global incidents that have been talked about, what have you. This is not as long as the normal program, so folks, if you are tuning in live, this is not one where you just want to kind of sit around and wait until the last minute, because we will only be here for about max 90 minutes. So if you have a question, thought, want to take advantage and ask a question, victim of racism outside the States, this is your opportunity. 641-715-3640, the code 564-943 pound. Press *61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943 pound. Press *61 if you would like to participate. Question, comment, what have you. Before we get to some of our international folks, the audio at the top about the racist Dolce & Gabbana commercial, I'm not sure if that was big news around, if folks who are listening to the program, if people had heard about that. I do think that's significant because a lot of times when we talk about degrading images on television, commercials, TV programs, and what have you, we talk about content directed at Black people frequently, and absolutely there is lots of that. But as I said, this is a global system of racism, white supremacy. This is what whites do all the time, everywhere they go. If the individuals are classified as not white, this is what we do. And if you look at, if you look at some of the different reports on this particular incident and how they are trying to manage it, Dolce & Gabbana, high-end luxury brand, I'm sure we probably have some folks who own a few of their items listening. But high-end brand, and they were talking about how for a lot of non-white people in China that there's this growing market for purchasing these luxury items, system of racism, white supremacy, white identification. And so they were saying that this is horrible because, they could make lots of money. System of racism, white supremacy. I do make an effort to point that out regularly. The most powerful motivating voice is not pounds, sterlings, any of that. It is the system of racism, white supremacy, practicing racism, exactly what you heard in that commercial. And I think you can actually see it if you want to go inside and check the video. With that, for right now, we have Andrew in the UK with us, longtime participant in the broadcast. We've had him on many, many times down through the years on the Global Sunday Talk on racism. He was emailing and asking, what is the deal? Folks look forward to hearing his views on the broadcast. So he definitely was getting on Gus, like, what's up with the Global Sunday Talk on racism, and checking in to make sure that I was okay. Good to hear from you, Andrew. Are you with us, sir?
Yes. Can you hear me, Gus?
Loud and clear. Yes, sir.
Good, brilliant. Yeah, great to be here. Yeah. First and foremost, I was worried about you.
Yes, sir.
Just wondering how you are, really. and so it's good to hear your voice. Good that you're okay. It's good that you're just doing your thing, which is absolutely fantastic. Because to be honest, I know how I've seen here how the system can look to take you out, especially if you're doing something constructive against racism, against the actual system. So it literally take you out, if not immediately, but over time. So and it's orchestrated. So it's good to see that you are, that you're alive and well, and that you're doing your thing, and that you're, just good to, and obviously great to, that we're doing this show.
Absolutely. I definitely wanted to get your thoughts on Brexit, since you are at ground zero, and we had folks in the States who were curious about that for lots of different reasons. But before we get to that, the Dolce Gabbana segment in China, I don't know if you'd heard about that, the big hoo-ha over this racist ad. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it, but I heard them talking. I listened to the BBC World Service, and it's really, really good for talking about news, well, all over the world globally, but also on the African continent. And they said something about this D&G advert. The bit that I got was that the company is now in the middle of practicing or trying to practice damage limitation. So because obviously it's bad for their brand, they've had some kickback, from it. And so now they're just trying to sort of, practice a bit of damage limitation on that, But, a lot of these fashion brands always make the same mistake. And that company apparently has done something similar before. So it's, it doesn't surprise me, these people of these companies, of these fashion brands and all the rest of it, they do this kind of stuff all the time, they make these faux pas all the time. And then, they may, ignore the flack. If it gets really bad, they might then try and do, come back at it and justify. And if it gets really bad, then they backtrack and practice verbal damage limitation. So it's, it's standard for what these companies do. So, and they also feel that if it's acceptable, as some other countries, like it could be China, it could be parts of Europe or wherever, they've got different advertising standards. If it were to happen in the UK, it would be quite a sizable African Caribbean backlash or verbal verbology against it, and then they'd have to say something about it, similar to the Windrush thing. But it was somewhere where they thought they could get away with it,
Oh, are you still with us, Andrew?
Yeah, no,
okay.
Still with you. Yeah.
Yes, something they could get. Absolutely, period.
Something where they could get away with it.
Got it. And for folks who are listening in, the Windrush scandal that he mentioned, these were black people from the Caribbean about 50, 60 years ago, maybe a little more, who came to the UK. It's come over. We need folks. This is after World War II, so we got all this ruin here. Come help us rebuild all our wrecks and blah, blah, blah. And so they bring all these black people in, and now a lot of these folks, they didn't get, papers, passport, all the legal documentation. It says, oh my God, we're in ruin. Come help us. And so now it's, oh, you niggers don't have paperwork. You might have to get out of here. And I don't know. You don't have your documentation. You might be one of the, why we're doing the Brexit to begin with. We got too many dark people here, so you can get out of here too. You don't have paperwork. You might have came in with the rest of these foreigners we're trying to get rid of. Is that a correct assessment, paraphrasing basically the Windrush situation?
That is pretty much it. You're talking about my mum's generation, or my grandfather's generation actually, that came here in the late 60s. My granddad brought my mum here in 66, but that second wave, my granddad came here in 1960. The second wave started coming over in the mid to late 60s, right through to the early 70s, and it's that generation. So it's that generation, my mum's generation up to my brother's generation. My brother came here in 77 from Jamaica. So you're talking about that late, a 10-year generation pretty much from, say, the mid 60s to mid 70s kind of. And they didn't need papers because you're talking, what this government said is if you are, they came over on the papers of their parents. That's the whole idea. They came over on the papers of their parents, and you got to remember also that Jamaica was considered part of the British Empire. I mean, is either a Commonwealth or colonial country, depending on before and after the end of when Jamaica got their independence. So you're talking about people that didn't need papers. That's the point here. And so at some point they and the big thing about this, you're talking about a government really under Theresa May, actually, because she was at one point in I think the Home Secretary. So you're talking about an office that purposefully destroyed boarding cards, or when they came off the boats, they still held these things and they purposefully destroyed them. They could have given them to a museum. It's the kind of thing you give to some sort of foundation to look after, because you're talking about history. Instead, they decided to burn them. All right. And so you're talking about putting chips in place, right? You're talking about doing this, doing that, doing everything you need to do so that later on you then come bam with a law. The law is, why haven't you, are you a British citizen? Okay, prove it. Do you get what I mean? And so that's what you're talking about, and they knew what they were doing. These people knew what they were doing. I didn't think they figured for the backlash that happened, that's the only thing. I think they thought they could do it through the back door, and it wouldn't cause a rumble. And in this country, the African Caribbean, the Caribbean community, when I was growing up, used to be very, very vocal. The Caribbean community has been diluted now because apparently 40% of all Caribbean men now have children, whatever, outside of the African Caribbean community. So right there, the community is dead. So that is the reason why they thought they could do it now, without very much backlash. But they were even at this late stage in the community, I would say the death of the African Caribbean community in the UK. Even at this late stage, there was enough of a roar, thank God, to stop their nonsense. I don't know how long that's going to remain, though, Gus.
Feverish in the UK as well. Wow. And much obliged for the summary and putting it on a personal level with the Windrush situation. As I said, the same animosity about non-white people, and I particularly appreciate the emphasis on this is not happenstance, this is not an accident, this is the deliberate machinations of racism, white supremacy. In my view, this parallels very much with Brexit. That's supposed to be going. I think we've been talking about that for years now. That's how Theresa May came to be prime minister back in 2016, almost 3 years now, of the sentiment, hey, we are tired of this. Us being a part, us being England, us being a part of the European Union. Hey, we're allowing too many folks to just trounce through, too many non-white people to just trounce through our area and forget it. We're going back. I think even UKIP, before all that, we're tired of this. It's too many immigrants coming in here. It's too many non-white people coming in here. Britain for British people. That's what, and I mean, you could just switch that for white, but that's supposed to be going down, everything being finalized. Or I guess you can update us. You're right there. What's your sense on where things are? I thought they had come to some sort of agreement.
Yeah, I mean, just today, I think, or was it yesterday? Theresa May's agreed. The Europeans have agreed Theresa May's draft plan, as I understand it. So that's been agreed. Interesting that they've agreed it. The reason why I think they've agreed it is because at the end of the day, I think they want a deal. A no deal doesn't benefit the European countries. It just doesn't benefit them. But they want a deal, and I think I think they've got, because they've got most of what they want from Theresa May. I think they're happy to sort of it's about give and take. No deal would mean no trade deal for the Europeans as well as the English. It's as simple as that. So, it's with anybody, from an economic point of view, it's within everybody's deal to have a deal. As I understand it, which country? There was some issue over Gibraltar. If I've got that, if my memory's not playing up, this country is in control of Gibraltar still, even though it's miles and miles and miles away. And there's history behind that, but that's not relevant to this conversation. I think what's relevant here is how African Caribbean people in the UK view Brexit. That's interesting, because here's what's happening, right? You've got a lot of African Caribbean people in the UK who voted for Brexit, right? Some of these Africans are of the mindset whereby they're thinking, hey, we've got a lot of Eastern Europeans coming over here. Listen to this one. Taking our jobs, getting free stuff, blah, blah, blah. What about our kids? What about our kids? Now, this is coming from a lot of African Caribbeans. So they voted for Brexit, right? Now, including my brother and his wife, and I love them to bits, right? And they voted Tory as well for the Conservative Party. And they're not the only ones. A lot did. I've explained to a lot of Africans that the reasons they are voting Tory Brexit are not the reasons why a lot of white people in England are voting Brexit. The highest court, as I understand it, is in Europe. So if you want to query or question your human rights as an African, as a Caribbean person in England, right, in any area, right, you can appeal to a higher court than what's in the UK. Do you understand that? So whatever's going on here, you can appeal to a higher European court that doesn't come under the jurisdiction of the UK. Now, if you're a racist living in the UK, that doesn't benefit you, does it? So what you're going to want, right, you are going to want to get rid of any European control, anything that stops you, right, from passing your racist laws. That's what you're going to want to do, right? And I'm going to argue, right, that is the real reason why a lot of people in the UK voted Brexit, is to remove any human rights. I mean, in fact, they've said it. I mean, in this country, there's been a lot of debate around curtailing human rights in the UK. That's been debated now for the last few years, and that certain people have too many human rights. That's dictated to by Europe. So what you're talking about are a load of English people, a load of white people in England that want to remove that safeguard. So the idea is this: yes, to stop possibly to stop Eastern Europeans from coming in, but also to remove any safeguards for any other perceived foreigner or any other perceived, as Frank Kitson put it, police chief, the enemy within, to remove anyone else who's perceived as the enemy within, and that is all African Caribbean people. If it's Eastern Europeans, and it definitely has to be and has to refer to African Caribbean people. So that's really what's going on there, is to remove the layer of law, protection in law that you find in Europe, that we are under, that this court in the UK is under. And that is what this is all about. And when you explain this to African Caribbean people that voted Brexit, right, most of them really have got nothing to say, because they don't know, they don't understand. Do you understand? Have you got that? So that's, so people vote for things and they don't really understand where it's all going. It's ignorance. And so that's how it affects us.
Wow. I greatly appreciate that. Number one, the system of racism, white supremacy, powerful, motivating force, generates a lot of confusion, the vast majority, Dr. Welsing, she would say 99% of the non-white people on the planet do not understand what racism is, how it works. That's why we make a lot of errors. Your relatives and, them voting for Brexit and thinking that non-white people are coming over and taking that sounds so familiar. I feel like I've heard that before. But that is even more fascinating about the different levels of power in the court system, and that being one of the results of this, that now will no longer be under this other court's jurisdiction. So, hey, we can do what we want, and you won't have recourse to appeal. If it's the Windrush situation, the Grenfell Tower situation, lots of incidents of racism, white supremacy, where you might want, hey, I'm being mistreated, let's bring someone else in to adjudicate, and removing that layer of protection. And even more interesting, you saying you trying to explain this to people and them either not responding or they don't understand. I think we've been talking about this for 2 years. They've been talking about Brexit, and all this goes back to like 2016, even before that. I think this is the first time that I've heard someone say that this could be one of the results in terms of racism, white supremacy, with going through this and how it could adversely impact Black people, non-white people in this part of the world. I know we had a listener here in the States. They were saying that they think that this will have adverse implications for Black people even beyond Britain. Have you seen any evidence that this is going to be bad for Black people, even, outside your local, what they call national area?
What Brexit's going to be bad for Black people outside of the UK?
Yes, sir.
I've heard different things, but I mean, I'm not sure that I'm, that I agree with a lot of what's said. So, for example, leaving Europe. I've heard the view put forward that leaving Europe would actually mean a curtailment to the influx of Eastern Europeans. Therefore, going back to what I said before, therefore there's going to be more jobs for African Caribbean Black children in the UK. This kind of thing. But I just don't agree with that. I don't agree that I do not agree that Eastern Europeans have been coming in and taking jobs from African Caribbean youth, Black youth. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I mean, as a school teacher, I don't see that that's a big the most important thing for us. I think the most important thing for us really is police harassing African Caribbean children. I mean, and I say that as someone who was harassed as an African Caribbean child, and it's just there's been no change. I've seen zero change since I was a child, which was 40 years ago, 30 years ago until I am, to now. I've not seen a change in that. I don't think that having more Eastern Europeans in the country, one way or the other, is going to do anything to stop us from getting jobs or starting up businesses. I don't see that. So I don't think that. But I've heard the view put forward that it's better to go to have Brexit and someone that's going to benefit us. That's what I've heard. That's the bit that I've heard. But I can't see that. Any protection in law is better than no protection in law. You could use it to some degree. It's not brilliant, but it's better than nothing. The court, the people here hate when you can appeal to a higher court. It's as simple as that. They don't like it. But that protection's going to be eroded and it's going to disappear when this country leaves Europe. I'm going to say this though, a racist can somehow cut off, so I'm going to use a metaphor, cut off their nose to spite their face. In other words, a racist can and this goes back to what you were saying before, Gus, that it's not about money. A racist is quite happy to lose a load of money if it means they can practice racism, because this country is going to lose a lot of money in business, but they're going to more than make up for it in having fun with non-white people, and that's the truth.
Context of White Supremacy. Very important. That should be a global part of our code. Anytime there's some sort of allusion or hint that white people passing any sort of policy or law, oh man, the black people, this is going to make your life spectacular. Things are just going to be great for you. All these wonderful things are going to happen once we pass this law. There should be a lot of suspicion anywhere in the world where white people say this is going to happen and it's going to be great for you. I know you said you listen to the BBC's Global World Report. I do as well. Frequently, they talk about racism, white supremacy, right in line with the Brexit sentiment and disgust about non-white people coming into that area of the world. Just this past couple days, they were talking about, I think the way that they phrased it was voluntary colonialism. This is okay, you know what I'm talking. Yeah, just for our listeners, really quick, this was a proposal that was pitched. We don't want the niggers coming over here, and you all are too ignorant and primitive to satisfactorily take care of your own affairs. So what we propose is we will run the land in your area, and we'll get it all spiffy and straight. And then, as opposed to you all coming over here crowding our space, you can just stay where you are. How about that? Did you throw thoughts on this, sir?
You see, oh God. You see, I don't know where to start with this one. I think it was, my memory of the report was that it was a suggestion made by a German politician, right? The idea was, well, verbally, what they said was lease the land, develop the land and the infrastructure. And what this German said that they would bring is expertise, development of infrastructure, meaning, roads, agriculture, building works, electricity, gas, utilities, and all the rest of these things. So that was their suggestion, that lease the land, and I'm going to make an assumption to lease it for something like 99 years or something like that, right? There's some obvious issues there, right? One issue is if you let any rodent into your house, they will breed, right? Sorry to use another metaphor. If you let any of these people into your land, right, then their aim, well, the capitalistic aim anyway, is to multiply and control and develop for yourself. That is what capitalism is. It's as simple as that. And white culture is capitalism, is racism. It's all one and the same thing. It's difficult to have one without the other. But anyway, right? So that's what you see. But the sad truth here, Gus, I was in Ghana for 3 weeks over the summer, and the sad truth is many of our leaders, when I say our leaders, I mean African, Caribbean, black leaders on the continent, right, are corrupt. Right, a lot of them have got bank accounts in Europe. So if this German is making this suggestion, the only reason he's gone on air making it is because he's already pinpointed certain Africans that he can pay to make it happen. He's already, the wheels are already in motion for this. Do you understand? Right. So you're talking about something that's already in motion, right? You've already got, as I speak now, you've got Europeans that have bought up, and the Chinese that have bought up. I'll come to the Chinese in a minute, because the Chinese are playing a game with Donald Trump in terms of white supremacy. The trade war is specifically a fight for supremacy on planet Earth. So Trump, being a white racist, right, in his head, he knows it's important to win that from a white supremacist point of view. But anyway, we'll come back to that, because that's an important fight going on right there. But in terms of this, right, it's already happening. And what these Europeans have been doing for years, because it's been a tried and tested thing. And again, it's in what this German's been talking about in terms of voluntary colonialism. It's in direct competition with what China's doing as well in Africa. So what you're talking about is colonialism by a supposed new model in competition with what the Chinese are doing there. So in other words, the Chinese are supposedly doing business partnerships, which is really just paying Africans in another way, paying African leaders in another way, in my opinion. And what the Europeans are trying to do is do the same difference. Are you with me? So this is what you got. So it's the same old scramble for African land. The sad thing here, right, for me, right, is that you've got a lot of African leaders, so-called leaders, whether these are the assemblyman, which is like a local politician. In the UK, we call it like our local MP. I'm not sure what you call it in America, but in the UK, Chuka Amuna is a local MP for a place in South London called Streatham. He's a local MP. In Ghana, you've got the assemblyman, which is sort of similar. Then you've got the chief. The chief is, in the UK, we've got something called the land registry. Now, I didn't know that in Ghana, the chief is actually the land registry. In other words, his office registers the land, who buys it and who sells it. That is the chief's office. So whenever we say the chief, really what we're talking about is a land registry. Do you understand? It's really important to understand that, because but anyway, the issue here is whether or not these men and women that hold these offices on the African continent can be paid and bought by Europeans. That's the problem. And sorry, Gus, the sad fact is there is not enough accountability on these men and women that hold office on the African continent. It's there needs to be a whole level of accountability. And I'm going to say this: the younger people in Africa are demanding a higher level of accountability from supposed African leaders. Yeah. And that it's a massive struggle that's going on. And it's a cultural struggle, because culturally speaking, this whole thing about accountability, right, is not necessarily a traditional cultural trait. Young Africans are demanding it, and we need it, because otherwise these Europeans are going to be able to come in and play the same game, pay off these old Africans leaders and take the land, lease the land. Do you understand? So this is holding these African leaders to account, right? Africans holding these African leaders to account will stop these Europeans from stealing the land. It's not even stealing, because the African leaders, frankly, a lot of them are giving it over. They got a Swiss bank account, money's going in it, and suddenly, they paved the way, right? So we have to hold these African leaders to account. Otherwise, these Europeans will come in. Their game has not changed. The European game hasn't changed. Do you understand? Right, so we have to flag it up and hold our own leaders to account. And we have to do our utmost to remove our leaders if they're not stopping, selling our land cheap. We have to get rid of them. It's a serious point. We have to get rid of them. We have to speak it and speak it and speak it and speak it and speak it. Because the European game hasn't changed. What did he say? Voluntary colonialism. That doesn't appeal to any young African. None. It's rubbish. Sorry to go on a bit, but that's a massive thing right there. Voluntary. That is that point that you can hear that repeated and repeated and repeated. And it's going to happen via the back door, right? That under the table, those kind of deals. That's because that would never wash, right? Overtly, no African leader could take that idea to the people. Do you understand? It's going to happen via the back door, So that's what I have to say on that.
Context of white supremacy. I know folks who are stateside listeners, that word accountability comes up. Always put alerts when that word comes up in the system of racism, white supremacy. And I'm reminded some of our guests that we've had on the program, even guests in different part of the world, because we've talked about this is such a massive problem in terms of what they call corruption on the continent, really throughout the system of racism, white supremacy, but we're talking about the continent specifically right now, and having quote unquote leaders, black people who are taking money, have somehow they've been compromised. They are loyal and acting not on behalf of the black people that they are amongst on the continent. They are acting on behalf of racist man, racist woman, racist child. And it seems like this has been going on for a long, long time. Like when I say a long time, I don't mean like 40, 50 years. Like it seems like people even bring up this same type of scenario when they're talking about slavery on the continent and or when they're talking about the thousands of played the report yesterday talking about how did they get these thousands of artifacts. Oh, they would go in and talk to the chief and work it out, and boop, the white people would come away with a whole cart full of goodies, and that's how they got their museum stuff. In my view, if this problem with accountability has been going on for so long, that might be this is a crucial, necessary, irrefutable aspect of racism, white supremacy, that whites are always able to corrupt or get non-white people to work on their behalf in this system. That's just what racism, white supremacy means, and thus I've just concluded there's not really anything that can be done about that at this point because the problem is so long running, and I've not seen anybody where they can do anything racist they can apply. I mean, it's just what the mechanics, the logics of what white supremacy racism means. Whites, they can apply a lot more pressure, carrot, stick, metaphor. They can give a lot more goodies to persuade you to act on their behalf, or the threats. Well, if you don't hook us up and get the land that we want, well, we might kill you and all your family and everybody, or we'll let you live, or we'll kill all of them and blame you for it, or what? Lots of different ways but that's just what the logics of it seems to me, because so many non-white people for centuries have been complaining about the same problem, and none of us have solved it yet. Is what I'm saying, does that make sense at all, or am I talking crazy?
No, you're right. Because it reminds me of something as well. Because you see, what I wanted to. I mean, because there's some obvious questions there, right? How did the white people on the coast, stationed all along the coast of Ghana, at places like Elmina Castle or Dixco Castle, because there was loads of these slave castles all along that coast. I mean, Elmina's a very popular one, famous one, but there were loads of them. Right. So how did these white people get access to Africans? How did that happen? Right. So that you're right. They offered loads and loads of money. That's number one. Number two, when I was in Busia, it's a place called Busia, which is on the coast in the western region. Busia is like a fishing village on the coast, just 2 hours from Elmina Castle. Right. So I asked the question to a lot of different people. In fact, I film it. I asked the question of a lot of different people. How did that happen? Now, there's a famous tribe on the coast, pretty much. I wouldn't say tribe, I mean, it's really a nation. They're talking about millions of Africans. Tribe is a bit of a silly word because people begin to think about 5 people. No, you're talking about millions of people. And they were called the Ahunta. You could Google it. Ahunta people or Ahunta tribe. Tribe's a white word, but say Ahunta people or nation. Now, these people fought against the British. Every slave caravan that they found coming to the coast, they basically freed the slaves. Do you understand? Right? So it's incorrect to say that we sold ourselves. Just because you've got 1 or 2 Africans, right, basically kidnapping other Africans, that does not denote that Africans sold Africans. Does that make sense? You get idiots in every nation. It's the truth, right? However, it's correct where you say, when you talk about European force of arms, because what the British did, they basically fought against the Ahunta people, fought against them, and at the end of the day, you're talking about force of arms. That's really what you're talking about. So they basically killed them, and then they threatened all of the coastal peoples, the Fanti. In other words, what makes you and I up? They said, if you don't help us, we're going to kill your leaders, take your leaders, and basically raise up leaders that benefit us unless you do our bidding. And that's exactly what they said. And that's exactly what the British did. That's exactly what they did. So you're correct. They're talking about force of arms. You're talking about forcing people to do things through force of arms. Yeah. So I agree with you. What I'm saying though is that we have to what I realise about white supremacy is that it doesn't give up, right? So with Donald Trump, not changing the time, but with Donald Trump, he's locked in a war now, and in his head, he can't give up, right? He can't give up until he wins. That's the war that he's fighting. You can call it an economic war, but really, it's a war by any other name with China. And what I think is that really, as far as I'm concerned, right, we have to say freedom or death, and not just our death, everybody's death. Everybody. If we can't be self-determined, then basically to hell with the whole plan. I know, look, this is a radical view. A lot of people is going to disagree with me, but it's either freedom for everyone or freedom for no one. And people have to know that we're prepared just to end it all unless we get freedom. And that's my point of view, because if it's not that, then it's white supremacy. It's one or the other, and it's one or the other, really. It's difficult. I can't see another way.
Context of White Supremacy. That reminds me of Mr. Fuller, codebook, producejustice.com. If you need any of Mr. Fuller's works, producejustice.com. But I think one of his most important points, I know he's talked about it on this program before, that the system of racism, white supremacy, one of the greatest errors that victims have made. We all make mistakes. One of the greatest errors that we've made is valuing survival more than justice. And I think that gets to the very core of the sentiment that Andrew just shared, that survival without justice is worth less. That's exactly the way Mr. Fuller explains it, that it cannot just be a priority on being here or being here a long time or being here, going right to the corruption thing you were talking about, being here with as many cool trinkets, because sometimes racists can give up lots of trinkets. They can make it real comfortable on the plantation. It cannot be about that. It has got to be justice. Nothing is more important than producing justice. Not even being here is more important than justice. That's the type of mentality that I think will push us closer to solving this problem, and solving this problem quickly, not pussyfooting with the matter, as we should not be. I will check the number again, 641-715-3640, the code 564-943#. Retired firefighter, did you have a question for Andrew in the UK? You should be with us, sir.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings, Gus. That you got good timing, because I was just on another line and tuned back in. The question that I would like to ask the callers that are outside of the quote-unquote U.S. About in this part of the world, they call it the quote-unquote holiday season. And I think it starts with Halloween, Thanksgiving. Don't let me miss anything, Gus. Christmas, Easter, somewhere in there, and then we're talking about even New Year's. What? And this question is specifically for people who are outside the United States. What are some of y'all codified responses? Do you participate, or do you don't participate? And I know all these holidays are not really cultured with everywhere. It may be cultured specifically for this area, but I know you have some days that are called holidays. And what is your compensatory response to what do you do or what you don't do with the quote unquote holidays? That's my question for the other callers.
Gus, I'm not sure who else is on the line. I'm quite happy to.
Yes, sir, Andrew. Feel free.
Okay, so I don't celebrate any of them. It's as simple as that. I mean,
Okay.
none of them mean anything to me personally. My family, my mum loves Christmas Day. She loves putting up decorations and all of this kind of stuff. I'm quite happy to go around there because the way I see it, it's nice to see family. I see most of my family every week anyway, but it's nice to see family, and it's nice to sit down and eat with family and this kind of thing, So I'm quite happy to do that. To be honest, what I tried to do last year, I bought them all a Black History calendar. Everybody got a Black History calendar, and they got a Kwanzaa card on Christmas Day. So you can use it as a time to educate your family about something totally different. So in other words, if you want them to celebrate, if you want them to find out a bit about Kwanzaa, just anything. I mean, I think the year before that, I bought my mum the book by Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization. She never read it, but she's got the book. My brother, somebody else might pick it up. So it's you could use it to, by children in the family, something about, I don't know, anything really. I mean, anything that is educational, really, honestly educational. I don't just mean academics either. I mean educational about teaching them about white supremacy, really. What it is and how it functions at their level. There's a lot of children there's a lot of African children, Black children, Caribbean children that simply are not being educated properly. So it's a chance to buy a child, even buy a girl, a toddler, 4-year-old, a black doll. Most Black children do not have black dolls. In fact, most Black children have never. I heard this on the radio. I heard it on Galaxy Radio in the UK. Most Black girls, toddlers, have never touched have never touched their mother's real hair. Wow. Never touched their mother's real hair. They've touched fake
something to think about.
But they've never touched their mother's real hair. So they touch fake hair, and then they touch their own hair, and they want their mother's fake hair. So, and this is not a slur on African Black women, no, but they've never done. So, if you buy a toddler a black doll with real hair, you've done a massive thing. They might not like the doll. I did that about 5 years ago. This little 4-year-old, not in the family, but for a friend's daughter, this little 4-year-old threw the doll on the floor and said, "I don't want it. I don't want it." She scowled. But that wasn't sad because that's understandable. What was sad is that her mother laughed. That was sad. So
to actually back up the thought. Yeah, I got you.
But getting back to the point anyway, it's a teaching experience. For these holidays, you can redirect it, divert it, or if you can't do that, just don't celebrate it yourself. And if people ask you why don't you celebrate it, just say, well, Christmas is a pagan ceremony. You know what I mean? That's what it is. That's where it came from. And just say, well, if it was honestly celebrating the birth of Christ, that's one thing, right? But the truth is, it's a pagan, capitalistic ceremony, but I value family coming together, and that's cool. You know what I mean? I don't celebrate Guy Fawkes. We call it Guy Fawkes night, bonfire night. I don't do that because that doesn't mean anything to me. And what's the other one? Halloween trick or treat. That's just nonsense. They just deserve cold water being thrown on them. That's what they deserve. And what, I don't know. Black Friday. Yeah, we got this Black Friday nonsense over here this week, which is just a con game. So,
okay. Does it register the same thing as it is over here, which is the first big rush to buy things? That's what it is over there?
It's a massive. It's been over here I noticed it for the first time about 3 years ago, when apparently there was some crazy fight outside IKEA in North London, apparently I have no idea why, but it was on the news. There's some mad rush, whatever. But and it's
same thing over here. Same thing over here. Fighting and whatnot. Matter of fact, not only fighting but shooting over here. Yeah. That just happened yesterday, day before yesterday. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. But it's nonsense. It's just all pure nonsense because these prices are hyped up before they're put down anyway. So it's just rubbish. It's just nonsense. But it's people get caught up in these things,
Right.
So it's difficult to teach people about this kind of stuff.
Right. I have one more if it's okay with you, Gus.
Proceed.
Any comments on Mr. Chow? I'm not sure. He appears to be a non-white person. Who the missionary who was killed by coming in and attempting to If anybody knows about that.
That was also on the BBC World Service. So you're talking about a missionary who went into a so-called Indian island, whereby
so-called Indian, mm-hmm.
Whereby the inhabitants, there was an agreement between the so-called Indian government and the local Indians that nobody would enter the island, because you're talking about indigenous. I can't remember what the technical term is, so I'm not going to use the word pygmy. But you're talking about really they're African people, right? And they're an African people, right? Because a lot of people probably don't know that you've got Africans living on islands in the so-called Indian Ocean. You've got Africans but anyway, right? So you're talking about a so-called Christian missionary who took it upon himself to. He didn't go to the island just once, He went to the island. I think he got killed on his third attempt to go, or something like that. His third attempt, I think, to enter the island.
I read that too. Mm-hmm.
So you see, on the one hand, right? In fact, no. He was told not to go. It was his third attempt. The people didn't want him. He was not only going against the wishes of the islanders, he was actually going against the law of India. They said no one is meant to go. Right? So basically, he, for some reason, which I don't know, decided to break the law of the land and take himself to a place where he knew by law he shouldn't go. Right? Do you get what I mean?
Right.
So and it was for the protection of everybody. The people didn't want him there. The people didn't want no one there. They agreed with the government. The government agreed no one should go there. And so what is with this person? It's like he's not listening. He's a law unto himself. And it's almost like kids. It's almost like if you're a graffiti artist, you shouldn't go and spray trains, even though I love graffiti, right? You shouldn't go because there's a third rail in the UK. We call it the third rail. It's dangerous, right? You've been told not to go. You go and do it anyway, and you end up dead. It's sad that you've ended up dead, but you were told not to go because it's dangerous and the people don't want you. And he went anyway, and he's dead. He was told not to go.
Yeah, it seems as though that there is some attempt to try to recover his body. That's the last thing I've been hearing on that. I strongly suspect behind his efforts, he was backed by white people who basically stated, "Well, if you're successful, that's good, but if you're not successful, then don't come looking for us for anything, because we're going to deny on any efforts to help that we supported you in any way." So, but I suspect though, if it was a white female that had that kind of ambition I need to go over there to research the gray gorilla or whatever she has an ambition for, that she would have had some sort of support on a continuous basis.
There's an important history to this case. The history is this, right? Africans saying to non-Africans, we don't want you in our land, and we're going to warn you not to come. If you come, we're going to kill you. We're not going to let you in. We're not going to open our arms to you. We're not going to put bandanas around your neck like Mardi Gras and welcome you in. We're not going to do that. We're going to kill you. If you step foot in our land, we're going to kill you. We're going to warn you, then we're going to give you a chance. We may give you a second chance like this man got. But the third time we're going to kill you because you're not respecting us. You're showing us no respect. We've told you we don't want whatever you've got to sell. I'm a Christian. I want to make that clear, right? But would I go and force my faith onto you? The answer is no. I won't do that. If you don't want to know, you don't want to know. What gives me the right to go and push myself on you? You see, white supremacy basically says, you are lucky to be our slaves, right? That's basically what white supremacy is. And we're going to come and we're going to come and benefit you by giving you what we have. But what if you basically say, we're not going to let you eat. Not only are we not going to talk to you, if you set foot on our land, we're going to kill you. And frankly, right, Africans on the continent of Africa, right, they can learn from that example. If you know what I mean. You're reading that? Sir. They can learn from that example. If you set foot in our land, on our land, right, then we're going to basically deal with you. This land is a closed shop. There will be no voluntary colonialism. There will be no nothing. In fact, the only time we're going to talk to you is when we got stuff we want you to buy, and then we're going to bring it to your country, sell it to you, but we don't want nothing you've got to sell us. It's a one-way communication, and it's what we want our way all the time. That is what we can learn from this example of these people that dealt with this man. Sorry, I mean, sad that he died. It's always terrible when someone dies, even through ignorance, right, or white supremacy, or false senses of superiority, whatever this man had. But the truth is, it's a brilliant example of how Africans can deal with other people, frankly. Sorry, because we know for a fact that CIA agents, right, infiltrate aid agencies, and they're running all over the continent of Africa. Not only that, European paedophiles are running all over the continent of Africa. I know they're doing it in Busia, Ghana, and they're doing it everywhere. And the sad fact is, sorry, Gus, if you want to shut me up, just shut me up. But the sad fact is, I know that you've got Europeans I saw Europeans picking up babies and stroking them. I saw African children running up to Europeans, and as if they're gods, and all this kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot more that I saw when I was in Ghana. I mean, it was a poor fishing village. I'm not saying this happens in Accra when you have more well-to-do Africans. I'm not saying it happens there, but where I was, what I saw, I just thought, my God, we need to safeguard our children. We need to safeguard our children. And I didn't see a lot of that happening, and it's because there's no understanding of these people. There isn't. So
yeah, they have their websites all over the computer.
I will pause there. 1 second. Retired firefighter. Context of White Supremacy.
Yes, sir.
We had a few other folks who dialed in, had a hand up as well. The caller 5771. Did you have question, comment for our listeners outside the U.S.?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, Gus. Greetings, Andrew, and greetings to all the callers and listeners. This is Henry from Chicago. I wanted to ask a question in regards to the protest and also the protest in the Netherlands about black peat. From my understanding, there is some sort of protest and for and against Black Pete. Andrew, can you comment on that? And is there more support for Black Pete, or is there more support for his removal? If you could comment on that.
So I missed that. Did you say Black Pete?
Yes, the racist character. He's supposed to be one of Santa's helpers. It's some sort of Dutch thing that they have.
No, sorry, I'm not familiar with that at all.
Oh, I'm familiar with that one. We actually had 10 years, Context of White Supremacy. We had black protesters from the Netherlands on the program, 2012, because this has been going on for the system of white supremacy has been going on for a long time. And then Zwart Piet, that's how they say it over there, Zwart Piet. Black Pete, that has been going on for a long, long time as well. But they were on the program. We talked about their protests and how they were treated. They were talking about some of the shirts and being accosted. Same thing that happens here. Black people go out to protest racism. Sometimes they get accosted by the police and other random racists, white people who insist that there's nothing racist or incorrect, because a lot of times it'll be white people who are dressing up to be Zwart Piet. They'll be in blackface and they'll get a wig and all the rest of it to do the whole costume to pretend to be Zwart Piet, and then they'll whine and cry. You're taking away our beloved character. We love Black Pete. It's not racist. He's just one of the little elves and all the rest of it. But this has been going on for a long time that they've been doing the protests, counter protests, all of it. And I'd have to go back in the archives, give me a second to find it. But 2012, we had black folks in the Netherlands on the program and talked about all this in great detail.
Yeah, I've been seeing recently articles of counter protests, in support for Black Pete just recently. So I was just wanted to see, what is the consensus? Is it for or against Black Pete? Because I'm starting to see more for Black Pete.
That was the sense that I got talking with them, that it was more people who were outraged that they, that these niggers had the audacity to come out and protest their beloved holiday to begin with.
Yeah, that was my sense too.
Right on. Appreciate that, Henry in Chicago. Mhandisi, did you have a question, comment you wanted to share? You should be with us as well, sir.
Yes, sir. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings to you and greetings to you outside of the United States. Is it Mr. Andrew?
Yeah, greetings.
I think. Yes, greetings. I had a question. So I haven't been to any part of Europe yet, but I see that there's a lot of people over there that have my last name, or some people. There's some people here too, but I wonder, have you spoken to anybody there that has your last name? Any white person?
I love that question. Off the top of my head, I must have done. I've been here 50 years. I must have done off the top of my head. I cannot remember that, but that is a brilliant question, because I don't know if it's been aired in America. I know it's on YouTube, and I know it's on the BBC iPlayer. There's two brilliant programs by a historian. Cannot remember his name now, but a UK-based black historian who's done two brilliant programs about slavery. But what's interesting is that his programs were specifically about where the money is now, and the families, the names of the families whom benefited from British enslavement of Africans in the Caribbean and the Americas. Really important, because when the so-called emancipation came, people in the UK were literally paid. They were literally, they claimed insurance. They were literally paid for the loss of earnings, right? So you had Mary Ruth of South London who had 2 slaves in Jamaica, and she was given X amount of shillings. And all of the names, the records, the names, all of them are online on quite a well-known database now that anybody can access. All of the actual names, first name, surname, really important. So anybody, any African worldwide can go and do their research and find out which white person effectively owned you. Because in Clarendon, Jamaica, my surname, Brian, Bryan, right? There was a big slave plantation in Clarendon, right? And it was owned by a family called Brian. So even right today, all of the dark, because I'm quite dark skinned, so so all of the dark skinned Bryans, all of them come from Clarendon, Jamaica. So when I've met loads of African Caribbean Bryans in the UK, and I know we're all related. So, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any white Bryans that I've met, but I must have done, and you would do, you come across them all the time. A friend of mine, I've not spoken to her for years, comes from Maryland. She told me 25 years ago, she was over here studying law degree 25 years ago. She told me that she's got white people in her family that she walks past on the street in Maryland. They all know their family, but they don't talk to each other. It's slightly different here because obviously we come from the Caribbean or West Africa. I mean, my mum, dad, and granddad come from Jamaica here. So, so all the slave masters left the Caribbean, most of them, and came back, in fact, went to America or came here. When the Maroons rose up in Jamaica, a lot of them went, fled for their lives. They went to flipping, went to the southern states or came back to the UK. That's the history. When the Haitians, when Toussaint Louverture and Boukman Dotti beat them out of Haiti, right? All of those slave masters went to America. That's the history. So slightly different for people like me as opposed to yourself. But no doubt, if I meet a white person there with my surname, there has to be connections down the line. There has to be somewhere. Do you know what I mean? But another little thing though, they changed their names. What this program says is that they changed their names, similar to a lot of other Europeans that want to hide their money. They changed on what they did. They changed their names. You know what I mean? But all of it is traceable, basically. If you want to do that,
Yes. I have one more question, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. It's slipping my mind right now. I was going to ask. So have you ever spoken to white people about what happened to the indigenous black people that were there before white people? What happened to the indigenous black people that were there before the 1700s?
What in places like the Caribbean, you mean?
No, in the UK. So the indigenous people or the people that were there before the 1700s.
All right. Not really. I personally haven't. I mean, if I'm really honest with you, I don't speak to white people about anything to do with me personally. I just don't do that because I used to. I have done when I was a lot younger, but a lot of their answers, I've heard everything they've got to say. None of it is new, so I don't really think I'm going to get a new kind of response. But no, I recently anyway, I just haven't bothered. If I'm really honest with you, I just haven't bothered. I've spoken to a lot of Africans about our history, about our present situation. My whole thing though is about the future. If I'm really honest, African history is important, but I'm very much concerned about the future now and about trying to talk about that, how we want the next 100 years to be. But but I've not really spoken about the path recently to whites.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Context of White Supremacy. Much obliged, M. Handisi. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Last few minutes, again, this is not like the typical broadcast, so we will not be here for 3 hours. Last few minutes, if you have, excuse me, a question, comment, remark that you want to make sure that you get in. I did want to ask, I think Retired Firefighter did have another question or comment, but before I get to him, I think yesterday we talked about Bakari Henderson. This is the black male student, U.S. student. He was vacationing in Greece in 2017. He was at a bar. Sobriety would be best. I don't even know if he was drinking, but just that whole environment is unsafe anywhere in the known universe under the system of white supremacy. Anyway, he was at this bar. Unfortunately, he was killed by this gang of white terrorist thugs. They just had the trial in Greece and, of course, anywhere in the world. Killing niggers, no problem. They exonerated these whites, and they had video of this incident as well. And they talked to his mom after his parents and all after this, horrendous tragedy they've had to go through for a year. Was this reported on? Did this become news over there in the UK, Andrew?
I didn't see that. Could you say a bit more about that? I didn't see that at all.
Bakari Henderson, that's the black male's name, and this was from last summer. This was the point Princess made last night, that this case didn't get any. They made all that hubbub about the missionary, and this black male was killed at a bar. Wasn't going someplace where he wasn't welcome. He was just at the local watering hole in Greece getting a drink on his vacation. Scholar, doing what scholars do, take a little vacation, do a little international travel, and was killed by this mob of racists. And unfortunately, I think this is a cowbell. I think got video of it. I think he was at the bar, and I think he might have been talking to a white girl that was there, and they got upset about this, and it was like 5 or 6 of them. Anyway, the report, because they just had the trial this week, it's been 17 months since the death of 22-year-old Bakari Henderson, and his family is still seeking justice. Bakari, an Austin, Texas native and graduate of the University of Arizona, was vacationing in Greece in July 2017 when a group of men killed him outside a nightclub following an argument. They chased the man down. They beat him to death in the street. He had no way to defend himself. They left him there to die. Jill Henderson, Bakari's mother, told KVUE's News from Greece. On Thanksgiving Day, a Greek court convicted and sentenced 6 men involved in Bakari's death, but instead of spending life in prison for murder, they will serve up to 15 years on a lesser charge. It was quite shocking to get the verdict, especially because we weren't prepared for it to go the way it went, Jill said. In hindsight, I guess it could have been worse. We're just grateful that 6 of the defendants will remain in jail serving their sentences. Bakari's family had spent nearly 40 days in Greece in order to attend his trial. This is not the outcome they expected. The men had no regard for human life at all. So to me, that shows that they were not remorseful. Jill said it kind of puts a stab in your heart to know, they really don't seem to care. The way the court system handled the case has Jill concerned about future incidents involving tourists. It does make us wonder if it's safe to travel over to Greece if you can send your child to Greece and they get murdered, she said, to not get justice. This makes me kind of leery to know that it could happen to anyone. I will stop there. It said they're supposed to be heading back to the States this coming Monday. But that's, current information on this case. You said you hadn't heard about it, Andrew?
No, I hadn't heard about that. So I've heard that, actually, that's not true, because I've heard the name, but I didn't know in relation to what. But for something, the name rings a bell, but no, it would have been brilliant to have had some of the other UK crew here, because I'm sure they could have shed more light on it. But the name definitely rings a bell, but I'm not sure where from. So it's good to hear the detail on it.
For sure. Some of them, unfortunately, since the holidays were brought up from retired firefighters, some of them, I think, did say that other holidays, obviously not Thanksgiving, but Christmas and some of the other things were starting to pop up on their schedule. So, hey, we'll see for next month. Hopefully, we will be back and rolling. I can get back to my normal schedule, and we'll have them back for December. Let's see.
It's a couple of questions, Gus.
Yes, sir.
Don't mind me asking you guys. What's going on with the, that policewoman who decided to break into? Well, she found herself in that black man's apartment, and she decided to shoot him. What happened? What's going on with that? And there's a case that we heard over here of some people who call themselves the police who decided to shoot a black security guard who was holding down someone because they had been doing, he's doing his job holding someone down. So what's going on with those two cases?
The Jamel Roberson case, I think that's the latter one that
Yes.
you're talking about. That's the black male security officer who was killed unarmed by a white suspected race soldier. I think I'm not super, and I will be the first one to admit proudly, I do not track these police shootings. I do try to be at least current enough for this sort of thing on the broadcast that someone says, "Oh, hey, Gus, did you keep up? Did you hear what happened there?" Just so I at least am not like, "Oh, I don't know," but I generally do not, because these happen every day. That would just end up being your job, to just track these shootings. And it's generally the same thing every time. What I just read with Bakari Henderson, that's generally what happens if they have a trial at all. The Negro had a history of selling drugs or using drugs or both, and he had a criminal record, and he had a gun, or it looked like he had a gun, and we're not going to prosecute, and the hate you give. And it's the same thing every time. I think it's psychological terrorism. Just Dr. Tommy Curry, the man, this is the only time where it becomes acceptable. Now we will show snuff flicks and show Bakari Henderson. I've seen him die about 80 times. Every time they have a report, they put his body up. The same thing. I'm looking at the report, not Jamel Roberson. I did not see that video, but I'm looking at the report for Botham Jean. That's the black male that was shot and killed in Texas, where the Dallas enforcement officer, white woman, Amber Geiger, she went and claimed she went into the wrong apartment and got surprised and shot and killed Mr. Jean. With that case, I know with Jamel Roberson, I think that case, the officer, all of that is still pending. I think he may have been arrested, the officer. Let's see. Amber Geiger, I think they are still checking to see if she's going to. Let's see. I'm reading the most recent report. This was published on November 24th. The newly elected Dallas County District Attorney was probably feeling more than a little pressure to deliver justice in the racially charged case of former police officer Amber Geiger killing Botham Jean in his own home nearly 2 months ago. John Crusoe, who is African American, recently said the most appropriate charge for the white woman who fired the fatal shot at an unarmed black male in his own apartment was murder, not manslaughter. But his comments came admittedly without being intimately familiar with the investigation into one of the most unusual police shootings in recent history that he will begin overseeing after he's sworn in next year. So it looks like she has been arrested. It looks like manslaughter is the charge that she's currently facing, and the trial, that'll probably be sometime a year from now. So that's the shooting in the house. The Jamel Roberson case, I think the white officer has been arrested, although I'm not sure what the charge is, and that'll probably be another one that you'll have to pay attention to for a year or longer and see what happens, if anything.
Right on.
I don't even think they've named the officer in that case. So actually, I have to rewind. I don't think there's been an arrest because they haven't even named the officer in that case yet. They've just hinted that they think it was a white person, but they haven't even named the killer of Jamel Roberson. So that's as much detail as I can give you on that one. And I can say something good. Kanye West allegedly gave quite a bit of money to pay for the funeral. I don't have a joke there. There's no punchline. I don't have anything to add. This is one time where we can mention his name, and it is constructive. He is reported to have given money to pay for the funeral. He's a Chicago native. This happened in Chicago, period.
That's good.
For sure. Let's see. Princess, did you have a comment that you wanted to add? Comment, question, aforementioned?
I was going to say good evening, callers from overseas. I was going to also add that I believe the latest update on that last case you were talking about, they did indicate that they're not releasing the police officer's name at this time. I believe they said, I can't remember, but I just know I had read the article, the last article on, I think it was Friday, that they had announced that they wasn't going to release the officer's name.
Mm-hmm.
Got to keep white people safe. Can't have random niggers give them too much information, and they could be camped out of this house or what have you. That's the sort of thing that they've said before in terms of justifying when these killers they want to make sure that they have anonymity. That's the sort of rationale that will be provided. Racist logic, in my view. The person, victim who dialed in, I guess you're on the vote line, perhaps. If you had commentary, you should be with us.
Yes. Hi, how you doing? Am I being heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. I had a couple questions if it was all right. I had one for you and one for Mr. Andrew.
Yes, sir.
One for you. I wanted to know if it was possible that you could possibly get Jeremiah Kamara, like for Christmas or something like that, 2018, if possible. I really enjoyed his 2 programs that you had with him and the slave sermons. And the question for Mr. Andrew, I wanted to know, I know he said he doesn't discuss much with Europeans over there, or if he does, like what is the conversation around Meghan Markle, and like how do they interpret her race? Because I work at the post office and I come across a lot of magazines, and the way they portray her is as if she's having Harry's baby, not the other way around. I've never seen that before, and I'm an attempted father, and I've never heard somebody say, "Hey, you're having," like it's just the wording is different. So I'll mute my line and let you comment.
Okay, so I mean, from what I've heard people say about Meghan Markle, from mainly on TV, really, because most white people really don't really discuss European politics beyond cracking a few jokes, if I'm really honest, from what I've heard. But on TV, Meghan Markle's been seen as a long time, I suppose, moderate leader of Germany, a strong leader. She's a woman who's managed to be there a long time. To where we are now today, well, she's not going to be in power very much longer anyway. The far right, as you probably know, is gaining traction all over Europe and America, but definitely all over Europe. So, she's having to deal with the far right, the centre, and the left as well, whatever that means. And really, at times, nearly over in power. Germany is seen, generally speaking, Germany is seen as a technologically
I think he was
able
talking
country.
about Meghan Markle, not Angela Merkel.
Are you talking about Meghan Markle?
Yes.
Meghan Markle.
Yes, not Angela.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's Meghan. No, Meghan Markle. Oh, sorry. You're talking about Harry's wife.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I said Meghan Markle. I was talking about the Harry's. What is she? I don't know how you guys worded it out there, but her wife. His wife. Correctly. Right. Okay. Yeah, because her complexion is a little bit lighter, and I know in the States, that confuses a lot of us over here, and some people could take her as like, she could pass as a white woman over here. I'm in Arizona. And, there's a lot of interracial stuff going on, and she could easily pass as a white woman if she just, alter her voice a little bit more. And, so So I was
Well, put it
wondering,
this
like,
way.
what's the perception of her out there? Do they
That's a
think
good
she's
question.
passing? Do they think she's black? Do they think she's white? So I'll let you comment.
Yeah, no. That's an interesting one. Okay, so it's God. Where do I start with this one? So you see, the English people are very good at. You've got to read between the lines when you hear English people speak. So on the one level, there's supposedly in the media anyway. When I say in the media, I mean on London radio stations. There's an apparent acceptance of Harry and his wife and this kind of thing. And isn't it great? Forward thinking. Harry's forward thinking. This kind of thing. It's great that the royal family's leading the way. Blah de blah de blah, and all of that kind of stuff. But all of that doesn't mean anything, does it? Because obviously, when those two got married, right, the only part of her family that was there was her mum, basically, right? So in terms of blacks being in her family, is only her, and then you had a gospel choir, right? And it's not very. That's not very sort of forward thinking, whatever nonsense, that they were, was the vernacular in the media at the time, and now it's just not there, really, right? So there's that. White people that I've heard don't really talk a lot about it in person. Don't really talk a lot about it. They really don't. In the media, there's, as I said, that sort of supposed liberal verbal view, supposed, right? But it's her movements, from what I can see, are carefully choreographed. Do you know what I mean? But the other side of all of this is I don't know to what degree she herself how she identifies. Do you know what I mean? How, bearing in mind this woman's married a white man, how does she herself identify? I don't know. I mean, I must admit, I've never bothered to stop to listen to what comes out of her mouth. So I don't know how she identifies. I have no idea. I know she's married, but so, that tells me what she's like for me personally. So why am I going to stop and listen to what comes out of her? I'm not going to do that. It's just not my interest. I think I said this at the time when we spoke about this before. It's just not, it's of no interest to me because she's voted with her feet in terms of her actions and what she's done. That's enough for me personally. I think what's interesting for me is what African Caribbean people, what black people say about that wedding and her. That's interesting, So to that end, I've known, when they got married, I know black women, mainly black women, that went down there to the palace, waved the flag. I know black women that celebrated the wedding. And when I asked why you celebrated it, it's this whole thing about acceptance. They didn't use the word acceptance, but it's the whole thing about saying things like, I'm paraphrasing, things like, it shows that one black woman can make it, and they're living their lives through this person. That's what's happening. And there was loads of celebration amongst African, black, Caribbean women in the UK that I saw. I spoke to these people, and it was on television. So that's the bit that I found interesting. I mean, I was talking about that just the other day with a black woman, and that needs to be explored, really. For me, that's that. I think it's important to explore that mindset. Why are we? When I say we, I mean why are African women celebrating that? What is that all about? And I'd like to know whether or not that wedding was celebrated by African women, black women in America. And why were they celebrating it?
Renethia
If they
Tate.
were.
Renethia Tate, author of Pieces of a Puzzle, which is all about black females in tragic arrangements, any sort of sexual activity with white men. That's what that book is exclusively about. And Renethia Tate is a black female who admits that she too was a victim of these tragic arrangements. And she talks about her own situation at the very beginning of the book. But she was on the program to talk about the royal tragedy early this summer, and unfortunately she was of the opinion that there were a significant number of black females even here in the States who were into the fantasy, and oh wow, this is amazing, and maybe I can vicariously experience that white validation and acceptance too through Duchess Markle. So that white fantasy, the white supremacy fantasy, that I think that was exactly the way that she phrased it, that has powerful appeal throughout the known universe under the system of white supremacy, unfortunately.
You know, I mean, we're saying this in light of the rape that African men, women, and children experienced during the enslavement period. We're saying this off the back of the power imbalance that exists in those kind of relationships. Do you know what I mean? You know, so that's why we're saying this. There's a power imbalance, and then there's frank rape of African women. So it's just crazy to want to marry these people and the fact that kind of, we're talking about racism that's happening now today. So why would anybody want to join with people that perpetuate, that perpetuate that system and do those kind of crimes? Really, why? You know what I mean? It's strange. And that is what this is, that's what we're looking at here,
System of racism, white supremacy. That is by design. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, there was a reason that she talked about black self-respect and having a correct understanding of what it means to be classified as white. What is racism, white supremacy, and how does it work? I think once you get answers to those questions and are brimming with black self-respect, then I think it becomes, you will understand why the importance, the power of making those decisions, finding this is nothing to celebrate, a black person being sexually assaulted. This is nothing to celebrate at all. This is not solving our problems, and that person is in danger, if anything. Anywho, we did our broadcast. As I've been saying, this is not our full normal broadcast. It's supposed to be shorter and encouraging folks to chime in who are listening around the world and folks stateside as well. Phenomenal to have Andrew back with us. Been too long. We should be here next month, rock and roll, and hopefully we'll have our other UK and other abroad listeners, participants back with us as well. But definitely good to have Andrew with us to catch up and exchange views on the global system of racism. I guess retired firefighter, I will give him the last words. He seemed like he did have a final question or comment he was trying to sneak in there. Retired firefighter, did you have one more question you needed to get in?
No, I just about said all the things that I had to say. I was, when you brought it up about 10 minutes ago, I was just sitting here thinking about something that I can come up with, but I haven't fully done that. So I'm good.
Right on. The caller in Arizona, his question about Jeremiah Kamara, I will work on that to see if we can have him back on the program. I do think he has a lot of constructive information, focuses on religion. He's been on the guest a few times before in the archives. You can go back and check it out. I felt like I lost the best method. It's been 10 years, or it's been, a long time. I felt like I had misplaced the best method that I had to contact him. I was trying to get him back on the program and felt like I had maybe misplaced or been negligent with that somehow. But I will work to see if we can get him back at some point soon, 2018, this calendar year, to get him back on the program. Mr. Kamara, Slave Sermons. He has several books as well about racism, white supremacy, the religion of white supremacy. With that, much obliged to all of our participants. Hope it was a constructive investment of your Sunday afternoon. Again, the iTunes feed, it is not allowing me to manually upload the programs as I normally do, but the archives are still available in a multitude of on a multitude of platforms. Mr. Fox, right in UK, best of Briton, has been uploading to YouTube. Let's see. The content is always at Black Talk Radio Network. Let's see. SoundCloud, Google Play. There are at least 4 other platforms, probably more, but at least 4 where the information is current. I know all 4 of the platforms that I just mentioned, they are current. All the programs that we did this week, except for today, obviously, but give me a few minutes. The compensatory call-in from yesterday, the book club with Dr. Tommy Curry, workplace racism, the most recent broadcast, all of that is posted at all SoundCloud, Google Play, YouTube, Black Talk Radio Network at minimum. And hopefully we can get the iTunes situation corrected so that the other platforms will be working as well. But there should be no shortage of options to access the C.O.W.S content. If you have questions, gripes, complaints, guest suggestions, untiljustice@gmail.com, untiljustice@gmail.com. It is the holiday season. The thing that I emphasize most is use of time and energy. Whites directly and indirectly do lots to dictate how we use our time and energy, mostly to support racism. One thing we can do with our time and energy during the holidays is I'm not going to invest my time and energy to the best of my abilities in all of this nonsense, the unnecessary shopping for overpriced items that Andrew mentioned previously, and just all of that. I got to go out and take my taser with me to get through the aisle to get 2 or 3 things. I'm not going to participate in any of that. If there are going to be some gifts purchased, something constructive that was mentioned earlier, or I'll just spend time with family as I can and be constructive, try to minimize conflict, see if we can work on something constructive, maybe clean the house or whatever. But how we use our time and energy, really be mindful of that year round, not just during the holidays. But I think that is super important for how we go about solving this problem. And as was stated, justice is more important than survival. Just being here, existing in a planet dominated by terrorism, that is not the goal at all. Not being comfortable in this, not being cool with this, not trying to see how long we can stay here. The goal above and beyond all of that is justice, establishing justice, permanently ending the system of white supremacy. With that, much obliged. Sobriety would be best. I should say that like 2 or 3 times during holiday season, because that's normally an excuse to, woohoo, we need to drink 50 times more. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white terrorism. Let's take care of our brain computer so that we continue to think well to solve our problems. In addition to being sober every time we are in a vehicle, let's be buckled up, driver or passenger. Let's do all that we can to minimize contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other Black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of Black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another Black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. No problem. You're a victim. Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Even my conditioning has been conditioned.